Hey, what's up guys? Garden here, coming to you guys with a deck profile on my Gancelot deck. So here we are with my updated Royal Paladin deck, and I am pretty happy with this deck. It is pretty cool to play. I was actually quite nervous with this deck. I was worried about the clunkiness and how consistent it was going to be, but the deck actually flows quite nicely. And also I thought I'd mention that I am doing something a bit different here. I thought I'd do a bit of a closer perspective on the cards, just so you guys can actually read the card text and also see the picture quite clearly. So we'll try something new here. We'll see how it goes, and also it's a bit easier on my side as well. So we'll just test the waters with this, shall we? But I'm quite happy with how this will look. So we'll get into the list, and to start with, we are going to be using 4 copies of Solidarity Knight Gancelot. Gancelot is really cool. Of course, turning Blaster Blade into a Vanguard as long as your opponent is on a grade 3, and because of that, your Blaster Blade will have the drive check, and he will also get access to his critical ability as well, since that is on a Vanguard circle only. But of course, the Regard circle will get turned into a Vanguard circle, which is very cool. Also, do note he will get a big chunky 10k power increase, which is actually pretty good in terms of making some pretty good column numbers with Blaster Blade. Gancelot is actually pretty solid. He doesn't really do much on his own, like he doesn't do much like himself, but he just makes Blaster Blade just so much better in terms of what he's able to do in the deck. And it's actually pretty good just in general because it doesn't cost anything in terms of resources. So you can actually dedicate a lot of the resources in this deck to your other units, which is actually pretty nice for a change. It's a nice change of pace compared to like the Alfred deck. So yeah, 4 copies of Gancelot. Got to play 4 of those in my opinion. So we'll move into the backup grade 3, which is going to be 2 copies of Powerful Sage Bairon. So the cool thing about him is that he does come with the force marker, so if you do end up riding him, it's not the end of the world. You do generate your markers, which is something you do want to do. But he's actually got some pretty nice skills, which is, whilst he's on Van or Rhea, whenever your other Regard is placed, this unit gets 3000 power. So the cool thing with that is that if you do end up riding him, you could actually put the force marker on the Regard circle, because he'll become a 16k, and then an 8k booster behind him will make him 24k. So you can actually get pretty nice numbers with him, and if you do put the force mark on the Vanguard, that's a 34k swing, which is actually pretty good for the most part. But the main thing that I like Bairon for is his second skill, which is while he's on Regard Circle, act once per turn. If your damage zone has more cards than your opponent, you can Soul Blast 1, discard a card from your hand, and then draw 2 cards. So that's actually pretty cool for the most part, because turning a Soul Blast and a discard into a draw 2 is already a +1, but that just gives you access to seeing multiple pieces in your deck that could really help upset your field up. So I actually quite like him in general, and that's why I wanted to run 2 of him, really. And also, I think 6 grade 3s was a nice healthy amount. I know we're quite used to playing like 8 or more grade 3s, but with the amount of draw power this deck can do, I think 6 is a nice solid number, and I do like having access to this card if needed. So yeah, pretty nice. So I like running 2 copies of him instead of the Alfreds. So with that being said, we have the final high grade unit in the deck, being the grade 4 Exculpate. I feel like one of him is enough. We don't really need more than one because the deck draws a ton. So you will probably see it at some point, and even if you damage check this, it's not the end of the world. The deck still performs well even without Exculpate, but it's just a nice alternative win con and a nice card to use against the XL matchup to clear those boards. And just any matchup in general, you know, attacking the entire fields is really powerful. And there's actually a cool synergistic play with this card with another card in the deck, which I'll show you later on, so that's pretty cool there. So 1 copy of Exculpate. So then we have the grade 2s, of course. We have the man himself, the avatar of the deck, Blaster Blade, playing 4 copies, of course, since, it's a Blaster Blade deck, essentially. So we're going to be using Gancelot with this, turn him into a Vanguard, and he'll have access to his Vanguard skill, giving him that critical so we can pressure our opponent. And the Retire skill, we don't particularly use that much, but like I always say, it's always nice for Royal Paladin to have access to a Retire, just in case there are any decent units that you want to get rid of on your opponent's board. So yeah, pretty nice. And also it does work with another card in our deck, which again, I will show you that later on. So full Blaster Blade, of course you're going to play that. Then we have the next grade 2, which is going to be 4 copies of Bedivere. Yep, very nice. Makes 24k columns with your Ks. And if you place this and then place K, you get a free draw, which, hey, I like drawing cards for free. I don't know about you, but yeah, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool indeed. And yeah, like I said, 24k columns, very nice. Not really much else to say about Bedivere. So moving on, we have a new unit to the deck. The guy on the playmat, we have 2 copies of Knight of Truth Gordon. So I was testing this guy out with 3, but I felt like 3 was a bit too much. I think 2 is enough, just because he only really works with Blaster Blade, and yeah, so we'll go into his skill. So during your turn, all of your Blaster Blades on your van and rear guard get 5,000 power, and then if Blaster Blade is in the same column as this unit gets boost. So yeah, you can kind of see why I only wanted to play 2, because to get the boost, you really want to put these in your rear guard columns, which you've only got 2 of anyway, so it kind of just made sense to me just to play 2 of this. And also we have access to this really easily with actually the next grade 2 here, which is Conjurer of Mithril. But yeah, with Conjurer of Mithril in the deck, we have access to whatever grade 2 we pretty much need at the time, and I think Gordon's a pretty nice toolkitty card to play with the Mithril, and just as a whole, you know, you can make 35k columns of this, because if you have Blaster Blade on your rear guard with Gancelot as your Vanguard, your Blaster Blade's already 20k. So with Gordon behind it, you're getting an extra 5, so it's 25, and then the 10k boost from Gordon, because remember, he is a grade 2, that's a 35k swing, which is pretty deadly, and that's without force markers. So like I say, you can get some pretty insane numbers, and Gordon just really helps with that. So you can actually put that force marker on your Vanguard without actually feeling too bad about it, since it will make the Gancelot attack a little bit more pressurizing. So that is pretty cool. So 2 copies of Gordon, very nice addition to the deck, and I quite like it. And you've already seen the next grade 2, which is Conjurer of Mithril. Decided to play 2 of this. Like I say, it's a really nice toolbox card, just to search out any grade 2s in your deck. So when plays from hand, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 card, call it to rear guard, and then shuffle your deck. Yeah, just very, very nice. Gives you access to all of your grade 2s in the deck, and most importantly, Blaster Blade, because that card is very, very important to see. So yeah, you could technically say these are 2 more copies of Blaster Blade in that regard, since yeah, it pretty much gives you more consistency with seeing him. So 2 copies of those. And then we have 2 copies of this thing, which I didn't actually realize was a thing, Loading Angel. So this was actually recommended by Richard from Nexus Corps, which I actually really appreciate him showing this, because I didn't actually realize how good it was. So at the end of the turn, if you have 5 or more units, you can counterblast 1, put this unit into your soul, and then draw 2. So I really like this because it synergizes really well with Blaster Blade's rush turn. So if you ride your Blaster Blade and setting your board up, you can actually put the Loading Angel onto the rear guard, poke with it if you're against like an Excel or Excel or Protect matchup, get that swing in, and then at the end of the turn, because you're going for that 5 unit, the 4 or more rear guards with Blaster Blade's critical for the rush, you can just use Loading Angel skill at the end of the turn to counterblast, put it into the soul, and then draw 2. So you're getting a +1, a card into your soul, and you're digging further into your deck in the grade 2 turn, which is just really, really good, and actually synergizes very well with the fact that we're only playing 6 grade 3s in the deck. So I quite like it, and it's quite fun to use as well. It is definitely a fun card to play. So yeah, I'd actually recommend giving this card a try if you haven't used it yet. So yeah, definitely very, very nice. So 2 copies of those. And that's actually the last of the grade 2s, so we'll go into the grade 1s here. We have 4 copies of Tristan, of course, Knight of Harp Tristan. Yeah, we're not playing King of Knights Alfred, so we do need a way of searching Blaster Blade consistently, and this card does it really well. So when placed on rear guard, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can counterblast 1, search your deck for 1 Blaster Blade, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Yeah, Blaster Blade Searcher, very good, works well with Gancelot, and yeah, I mean, there's nothing really much else to say about it, really. It's a Blaster Blade Searcher. I mean, why wouldn't you play it? So with that being said, we have the next grade 1 being 4 copies of Knight of Friendship K. Very cool, of course, to work with your Bediveres to make those 24k columns, and you can counterblast to search with the Bedivere in case you are in desperate need of making those column numbers, but I'll be totally honest, I don't particularly use this skill that much. I have to be very desperate for a field if I do use it, but more times than often, I tend to hold on to them just so that I can call them with my Bediveres and then get the free draw from Bedivere's skill. So yeah, 4 copies of K. Again, nothing really much to say there. Now, this was the part I was struggling with, which was the remaining grade 1s. I had no idea what to go for here, but I'm quite happy with my choices here. So, we have 2 copies of Knight Squire Alan. So the reason I decided to stick with Alan in the deck was because, well, for theme-wise, it's quite cool that he's also a knight, since a lot of the cards in this deck are knight units. So that's quite thematic. But in terms of technicality, I quite like Alan for the grade 2 turn, because you can put him behind your Blaster Blade, and then this will become an 11k booster, making it a 21k column, which is actually pretty good if your opponent's still on a grade 1 or a grade 2. And also getting that early game draw is pretty nice, just to help filter through your deck to see more pieces. So I quite like it for that reason. But also, in general, if I end up seeing this in the early game, I'll just end up riding it, because I prefer keeping my other units, like my Ks and my Tristans, in my hand, just so I can actually use their skills. So if anything, he's technically the best ride target in here, and with him being an 8k, of course, he can still hit. So that's that. But yeah, generally, I just like the fact that he's a good thing to put behind your Vanguard in general, because if you're on Gancelot as well, if you're on like a 23k with Gancelot with the Force marker, putting the Alan behind him to get the draw and then swinging with like a 34k swing is a pretty good magic number. It can actually force out like a perfect guard, or a protect 1 if you're playing against a protect deck. So yeah, I quite like Alan for those reasons. I don't like Maiden just because my rear guard back row columns tend to get like just clogged up really, really quickly with like K's and Tristans and that. So yeah, it's debatable, but I prefer Alan. But it's okay to run Maiden as well, I suppose. So yeah, choose what you like essentially. But I quite like Alan. So for the last couple of grade 1s, we have 1 copy of Pluck Enchanter. Very nice utility card for the deck, of course, to get the counter charge and the soul charge with Blaster Blade. But I only feel like running 1 of it. There's a lot of times where you actually don't need it, but it's quite nice to have access to it, just in case your opponent is damage denying you for some reason, and then you could just punish them by just playing this and then get the counter charge. So yeah, it's a nice toolbox card to have on hand. You know, it's nice to have. You know. But I don't think you really need to run more than 1. You could play 2 if you wanted to, but that's up to you. But the last card that I was waiting to get, which is why this deck profile was a little bit delayed, was Cloud Lancer Gmoris. So, this card, really, really cool. So what does this card do? When he's placed on Rearguard Circle, put up to 1 grade 2 card from your drop zone to the bottom or the top of your deck. Okay, so that's pretty good, so you can recycle Blaster Blade. And also, if you put a card, this unit gets 10k power. So he's an 18k attacker or booster, which is good. But the main thing I like with this card is that it kind of gives us a really good replacement for Monarch. So it gives us an alternative way to recycle Blaster Blade, but it also gives us a really cool thing we can do with Exculpate the Blaster. Since, of course, with Exculpate, what you can do is that you can just use Exculpate skill, set them all up, and maybe you don't have a Blaster Blade set up, but that's fine, because then you could call Gmoris, put Blaster Blade on the top of your deck, and then when you do your Twin Drive with Exculpate, you'll get the Blaster Blade, which means it sets up his skill, so you won't lose, of course. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool, and for that reason, I'm thinking about bumping him up to 2, just to have more recyclability and more access to that player, which I think is really cool. And I mean, 18k for the turn is actually pretty good. It's a pretty good attacker or booster, whatever you want to use him for. So yeah, I'd really advise running maybe 1 or 2 of these. But I really, really like this card. I think he's great. So 1 copy of that. So that is it for the grade 1. So we now have the grade 0s, which we'll just go through quickly here. We, of course, have Barcgal, the new starter, which is very nice to have him back. I'm definitely going to use him for a while. Then we have 8 criticals in the form of Future Knight Llew. Really nice to see him again. Really cool artwork. So we've got him. And then we've got 4 copies of Flogal, which I thought it made sense since I think Flogal and Llew were the ones that comboed with Barcgal in order to get the Superior Ride back in the day from the old Barcgal starter. So that made sense to me. So 4 copies of Flogal. And now, oh yeah, and in case you're wondering where my foil triggers have went to, I put those on my premium deck, because why not, eh? So yeah, there you go. And also, I decided to go common since, they all look the same, they're all the same rarity. And we don't have a choice with the draw PG, so that had to stay the same, unfortunately. But we, of course, have the 4 draw PG, just so we can get those early game draws to help see pieces, and of course the draw PGs are just nice to give us a bit of a free choice with our grade 1 lineup, so that's really cool. And then the final card of the deck is going to be the 4 Elaine heal trigger. Which, yeah, that wraps up the deck essentially. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This deck is very fun to play, so if you are looking to building a Gancelot deck, I would definitely recommend it. It is a bit more on the expensive side, since, you know, it's a new deck, and Gancelot is quite expensive at the minute, but if you're a Paladin fan like me, maybe this deck might interest you. So I will have the list of everything in the description below in case you want to just double check the list again. And of course, you can go through the deck profile again to read the skills if you want to get familiar with them. But that's going to be it from me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this new style of deck profile, and I hope you guys enjoyed my list. Drop your comments down below, tell me what you think about it, and we'll probably do Gold Paladin next week, I think. Yeah. We'll probably do Gold Paladin next week. That's what we'll do. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And like always, guys, take care. Have a nice day. This is Guardian, signing out.